Seeing as how Survivor Series 2015 is less than 24 hours away, I guess I should talk about it in some way, shape, or form before the show actually happens. If not a full-fledged preview and predictions, at least have one focused topic talking about the pay-per-view itself. There were a bunch of other wrestling-related interesting things that happened this week, namely TNA getting a new TV deal with Pod Network, which is, they just won't die. And not that I'm rooting for them to die. I'm just amazed that they're still alive. It shocks me that they've been able to overcome everything that they have and manage to still stay a functioning wrestling company. It's really amazing if you think about it. I don't know how they stay in business. I just don't. I don't understand it. But okay, TNA's moving to a new network. This will be their fourth one, I think, because they started on FSN, then the Spike TV deal, which was seen as a huge step up. Then they went to Destination America, and now they're going to Pop Network. So they're just bouncing all over the place. And I don't know anybody that still. I literally, as in my circle of friends, I'm the only one that still watches TNA, and that's only because I'm a wrestling fan trying to absorb as much as I can from as many different brands as I can. And even that's not a regular thing anymore. I watch it maybe once every other week, or once every 3 weeks or something like that. But yeah, that's the thing that happened. Bailey is going to be working with Eva Marie. We'll see if that's at the next Takeover special. But yeah, I think that the story itself has a natural element to it, and I think the character clash is interesting because you have on one side you have the lovable underdog babyface who's been a wrestling fan her whole life and worked her ass off to get to the point that she's at now. And on the other side, you have this hand-picked supermodel that the WWE is pushing because she's hot and has some level of crossover appeal. So they want to make a star out of her. Whether she's that talented or not doesn't matter. They just want to push her. So I think that whole dynamic is interesting. And I think the fans are going to be really into it because they'll love Bailey and they'll hate Eva Marie. The problem is that Eva Marie's abilities are highly suspect. And I'm being extremely kind when I say that. And I'm basing this entirely off of what I've seen on TV. She's green as goose shit. And, Bailey's going to have to work really, really hard to carry her. That's something that they're going to have to prepare for. But we shall see how that goes. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I would hate for, if this happens at the next Takeover special, I would hate for the streak of great women's matches to be broken. I guess it's got to break at some time, but, it's, Bailey's going to have to work really, really hard in that match to make it work. But, so that's something. What else is going on? A Ring of Honor is building up Final Battle. I've been watching the TV shows, and it looks like they're putting all the pieces in place to get to that show. They've already confirmed AJ versus Lethal for the world title, which I think is going to be a really, really great match. So I'm looking forward to that. WWE, speaking of Survivor Series, WWE got a threat from ISIS at the pay-per-view, which is terrifying. Hopefully there's nothing to the threats, and hopefully, I hope everything goes off well tomorrow night. I would hate for something bad to happen, obviously, especially, given the political climate currently and what's going on in the world these days. I would hate for something like that to happen on American soil at a wrestling event. That would be horrible. I'd hate for it to happen anywhere, quite honestly, but for anything bad to happen live on pay-per-view, that would be really, really bad. So hopefully the right security measures are in place and the show goes off without a hitch. Now, going into actually talking about Survivor Series, obviously the big storyline that's being closed up in this one is crowning the new WWE champion. Seth Rollins got hurt, so we're doing the tournament. And we're going to see who the new WWE champion is. I think a lot of people are thinking along the same lines I am. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose in the finals, with somebody doing a heel turn that results in the heel winning the championship, or Sheamus is going to cash in the Money in the Bank on the winner and ultimately take the title. I guess I would not be a fan of Sheamus walking out of Survivor Series with the title, but I guess he's got to cash in the Money in the Bank at some point. So They've got that card to play if they want it. So I think, I'm pretty sure it's going to be one of those two things that happens. So, yeah, hopefully it leads to something good and interesting. And, I remember when they did the Deadly Games pay-per-view in 1998. I mean, when they executed the Rock's heel turn and had him win the tournament, that was one of the best pieces of writing that the WWE had ever done. I mean, the whole creative and the twists and turns in the story, and getting to that point in the finals where Vince helped Rock win. I thought that all came off beautifully, and it was really well done. So I'm not saying it's going to be anything quite as good at this particular show, but they might have a similar idea with either Roman or Dean Ambrose. Probably Dean Ambrose, because I doubt they quite clearly want to make Roman the next John Cena. So I doubt they'll turn him heel. I have a feeling they're going to be really, really stubborn about Roman. But we'll see. I mean, Rock really benefited from a heel turn in Survivor Series, so who knows? But yeah, I think the tournament's going to play out that way. But the main selling point of the pay-per-view, or at least the thing that's part of all the marketing and advertising for the pay-per-view, is that this will be the show that celebrates the 25th anniversary of The Undertaker. And yes, the word anniversary is actually being used properly this time. Awesome. Good job. Anybody who's ever heard me talk about WrestleMania 25 and them calling it the 25th anniversary of WrestleMania, I mean, it's just, you're not using anniversary right. Drove me crazy. So yeah, but no, here they're actually using anniversary correctly. So I guess with that, I should probably talk about The Undertaker in some way, shape, or form. Undertaker, obviously, he's been around for 25 years as The Undertaker. His wrestling career predates The Undertaker gimmick by at least a few years, when he was the Punisher and Mean Mark Calloway, or Mean Mark Callis, I think he was called, part of the New Skyscrapers and all sorts of other things. Menial runs here and there, before it's, being given this once in a lifetime character that far exceeded any and all expectations of what anybody could have possibly thought of it. Really, truly remarkable career. And I know I've been critical of Undertaker in recent years, and I stand by my criticisms, especially when he beat Punk for the title in 2009. I thought that was terrible and severely damaged the SmackDown brand as a result. But that's my take on the matter. I'm not going to deny that Undertaker has had a huge impact on the WWE and on wrestling as a whole, and has been a favorite superstar for many fans over the years, myself included. I was a huge Undertaker fan at various points of his career. Early on, when he was first introduced, he was so different from everybody else that was out there. He fit within the mold of that more cartoony, larger-than-life era, like the Hogans and the Warriors and the Big Boss Mans and the Ted DiBiase's and stuff like that. It was a character that fit within that, but he was much darker, and this was and of course he was paired up with Jake Roberts early on in his run, which was perfect, because they were the two guys. They were very dark and very kind of gothic and, stoic, and not very loud and bombastic or colorful, but just very grounded in grittiness and darkness and all that other stuff, while also keeping a foot in that more cartoony era of the WWE. So it was really a unique character that captured my attention. And of course, me being a fan of even at that age, I was 5 years old when Undertaker first debuted, and when I first saw him, I immediately got visions of Dracula and Frankenstein from the Universal Monster movies. And, of course, the look and everything was based off the Western Undertakers that you would see in various Westerns, and just that iconography that you would associate with the Western Undertakers. And that was how it started, and it had a very gothic feel to it that, again, I equated with the classic Universal Monster movies. And it just evolved into this ever-growing, ever-evolving character with different looks over the years. I remember when he changed to the purple instead of the gray, and then when he became the Lord of Darkness and had the more leathery kind of Batman type of outfit, and then he moved into the Ministry of Darkness where shit got really weird. That's all I'll say about that. Turning Undertaker into a Satan's cult, satanic worshiping cult. That's interesting. Really interesting take for the character. I remember obviously the American Badass, the Return to the Dead Man, and everything that they've done since then. The Undertaker is just a staple of the WWE. And even though I'm one of the guys that's screaming for him to retire, it's like, all right, dude, seriously, we need to wrap this up and I kind of call it a day here. It is hard to imagine WWE without him. It's hard to imagine, say, WrestleMania without him because we were so used to the streak. And although the streak was broken at WrestleMania 30, I mean, the streak became kind of a main event onto WrestleMania all its own, where every year, especially, I think around year 9 when he beat Triple H at WrestleMania 17, that was when they first started making a big deal out of the streak. And every year it just kept growing and growing and growing from there. And it just became a bigger and bigger thing to where it kind of felt like a major attraction of the show itself. Now, eventually it got to a point where it's like, all right, yeah, Undertaker's going to win Mania, we know. Which is why everybody was so shocked at WrestleMania 30, because nobody thought Lesnar was going to win that fucking match. Nobody did. Yeah, it's, Undertaker, he's just been around so long, and for long stretches was very, very good. That was the other thing. The quality of his work typically shined, whether it be great storylines or great matches he was having, and I could sit here all day and talk about great Undertaker feuds, from his feuds with Hogan and Warrior, where he was, these are the two top guys in the company, and Undertaker is beating the crap out of them or standing toe-to-toe with them. I mean, when he beat Hogan for the title in Survivor Series, that was shocking. I'll always remember that segment at the funeral parlor where he beat up Hogan and then bent over and ripped the crucifix off of Hogan while Savage and Piper are standing by, like, just looking at him but being kind of tentative because they were kind of afraid of him. Those early feuds were great. Remember his feud with Mankind, which was a real refresher feud for him because prior to that he'd kind of been working with mostly like whatever monster they could feed to him, whether it be Kamala or Giant Gonzalez or the various stooges that Ted DiBiase would throw at him. Now, nothing really setting the world on fire, unfortunately, but once he worked with Mankind, that was kind of a match made in heaven because the two characters were just made for each other and made to feud, and it was they got a lot of mileage out of that, and it was very, very good. And not all of their matches were winners, mind you, but the actual storyline and feud itself was great. And, of course, they had the first Buried Alive match, which I really liked. That's probably my favorite match that the two had together. I know the Hell in a Cell is the most celebrated and most memorable, but my personal favorite they had was the Buried Alive. And, of course, a lot of people remember the Boiler Room Brawl, which was great at the time, has not aged well. It was one of those things that seemed really crazy and hardcore at the time, but when you go back and look at it, it was like, it wasn't really that crazy compared to a lot of other things. But overall, the Undertaker Mankind feud I thought was very good and really put Foley on the map in the WWF. I mean, he'd been Cactus Jack for years prior to that, but that feud with Undertaker really solidified him in the WWE and allowed Mick. It gave Mick a platform to eventually grow and develop as a talent and as a personality, and it obviously paid dividends years later when he was a main eventer and a major fixture of the Attitude Era and just being awesome. His feud with Kane was a big favorite of mine. Now, obviously, they played that fucking feud to death to the point where I never want to see that match ever again. But that first year, where the build-up to Kane, and then Kane's debut and him beating up everybody on the roster to get Undertaker to try to face him, to all the special effects that they used throughout the build-up, to all the crazy stuff, to how DX was interwoven to it, and how they did so many great things along the way with it. That's probably one of my favorite feuds ever, and I've always praised their WrestleMania 14 match as being one of my favorites. I love the way that match came out. Might be my favorite Undertaker match of all time. It's up there. The only other one, there's a lot of great Undertaker matches, but it's either, my favorite Undertaker match is either the WrestleMania 14 match with Kane or the Hell in a Cell with Shawn Michaels, because that was another insane, great feud where you just had this weasel heel in Shawn Michaels who screwed Undertaker out of the title by accident, but he still screwed him out of the title. And, Shawn Michaels proving that he's the worst referee ever, and anybody who ever puts him in a referee position should be shot, or at least fired from their job, because based on his history, you should never put the stripes on Shawn Michaels, because it's just somebody's going to get screwed. It's just how it is. But in any case, I thought the feud where Undertaker is constantly pursuing Shawn Michaels and Michaels manages to keep getting away, that really set up the Hell in a Cell match beautifully, where Michaels was trapped like a rat and basically got the hell beat out of him for 30 minutes. And just a really well put together match. And of course, it was the debut of Kane, which kicked off the feud with Kane and everything. So it was really great. Undertaker had like those two stellar feuds kind of going on simultaneously in a way. Two great storylines. It was like, all right, once he was done with Shawn, then it was time to move on to Kane. They actually, it was almost like they planned this on purpose, and it was just a great, well-written series of events, cause and effect, and great payoffs. It's like, oh no, call me crazy. Felt like a very natural fictional universe, the way they had set everything up. I'm trying to think of what, and to be perfectly honest, that period, like that 1996, like the feud with Mankind, to about 1998, when he was feuding with Kane and Austin, and that era, the early Attitude Era stuff. That's probably my favorite run for The Undertaker, because that's, like I said, that's when his feuds were at the best. Physically, that's probably the best he was in his whole career, at least on a regular basis. I mean, some people look at Undertaker, it's like, oh yeah, he's in great shape, but he only works once a year. This was a period where we were getting like greatness out of The Undertaker all the time, and he was like just an amazing athletic specimen. Really at the peak of his career, as far as a physical specimen goes. And beyond that, we moved to the Ministry of Darkness, which, like I said, was really, really weird. And I keep going back and forth on whether or not I like that. Parts of it I really, really liked. The night it debuted was one of the craziest things they ever did. And him being a blood-sucking crazy person with the beard where he looked like the devil and everything. So there were a lot of great visuals associated with it too. It was just a really strange direction for the Undertaker character, and actually it's one of the reasons I defended the change to the American Badass at the time, because I felt like the Dead Man needed a break. And the American Badass felt like it was something that was naturally him. It was naturally Mark Calloway, and something that he could naturally play himself, and it allowed for the Dead Man to kind of, like I said, take a break. And when they eventually brought it back, it felt like a big deal. And it allowed them to kind of refresh it and retool it a little bit for the modern era, and just keep the ball rolling. But that American Badass run, that was, it's probably what Undertaker would have done had he gone to WCW. And of course, Undertaker would have never gone to WCW because A, he worked there already and had bad experiences, and B, he can't take the Undertaker gimmick with him. He can't take the name with him. So he was better off staying in the WWF, and obviously it worked out for everybody involved, except for WCW. but and I'm not saying Undertaker is the thing that tipped the scales against WCW. He wasn't, but he was that constant for the WWF. You just couldn't imagine the WWF without Undertaker. And if he had gone, I shudder to think what would have happened. I predict he would have failed in WCW, no question, because they couldn't make him the Undertaker. They wouldn't have known what to do with him. I predict he probably would have turned into something like the American Badass, but it wouldn't have worked as well. I don't think. But again, that's just me. I mean, we are talking about the same company that had the hottest babyface in wrestling, Bret Hart, handed to them on a silver platter, and they didn't know what to do with him. So, I mean, coming out of that Survivor Series, hey, another tie into Survivor Series, Bret Hart was like the hottest star on the planet, and the most sympathetic babyface you could ever ask for, and they didn't know what to do with him. So I highly doubt that Undertaker would have worked as well. But yeah, and then obviously we went back to the Dead Man in 2004. Perfect time to do it. Madison Square Garden, WrestleMania 20, where it all begins again. Perfect place to do it. It took a while to really get the Dead Man Undertaker really back right because he was still dressing like the American Badass, which was really weird. It was a little jarring at first, and then after WrestleMania, he got into some really stupid storylines with Booker T and that feud with Paul Heyman, which still makes no fucking sense to me. The whole thing, and it resulted in the Concrete Crypt match, which I will go ahead and say might be the worst match of Undertaker's career because the whole situation was just stupid. It's either that or the Hell in a Cell with Boss Man at 15. Those two matches are the worst matches of Undertaker's career, in my opinion. But once they got it right, Undertaker, went back to having great feuds. I liked his feud with JBL. Really helped establish JBL as the WWE champion. I liked his feud with Randy Orton a lot. I thought that was one of the best parts of 2005. He worked very well with Edge in 2007 and 2008. I thought their matches were fantastic and just really, really good. And again, they had a storyline that went over the course of over a year and had some great payoff. They had a great Hell in a Cell match to cap it off. Excuse me. And he had a bunch of great matches, like the WrestleMania matches with Shawn, the WrestleMania matches with Triple H, although they're not as good as the WrestleMania matches with Shawn, in my opinion. They had some kind of downer feuds because they revisited his feud with Kane again, which I don't think anybody wanted. I remember in 2010 when they went back to doing Undertaker versus Kane, I was just in shock. I was like, what in the world what can they possibly do with these two that they haven't done a billion times already? And I just couldn't, it didn't work for me, and I don't think their matches were very good either. His series of matches with Batista in 2007 were mostly really good. The WrestleMania match I thought was the standout. But those were some of Batista's better matches for sure, and it felt like that was the big pairing that the SmackDown brand could offer. Overall that was enjoyable. I hated the stuff with CM Punk because of what ultimately happened, but we don't need to go there. Trying to think of other stuff I can praise him for, but I guess another thing I could talk about are my live experiences watching Undertaker. I've seen Undertaker live in person 3 times. I've seen him wrestle 3 times. The first time was a house show in 1996 where the main event was a steel cage match. It was Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker versus Mankind and Goldust, which made sense because those were the feuds going on TV at the time. It was Undertaker taking on Mankind and Goldust. It was Undertaker feuding with Mankind, and Mankind had an alliance with Goldust, so there was some cross-pollination going on there with Undertaker feuding with Goldust because he was feuding with Mankind, and then Mankind ultimately got built up to a title match with Shawn Michaels, the famous Mind Games match, which Mick Foley said was the best match of his career up to that point. And no, I think he still says that was the best match of his career, but. So it made sense for a main event at a house show to have those 4 guys in it. And it was a steel cage match, and I remember really liking it. Of course, I was only 11 at the time, but so, my memory's a little fuzzy. But I do remember the finish being Undertaker tombstoning both Goldust. Not at the same time. I should preface that. Separate tombstones, one on Goldust, one on Mankind, onto steel chairs. And that was the finish because they got knocked out. And, I remember thinking it was really cool. And of course that the live experience to be there live for Undertaker's entrance, even back then, doesn't do it justice. Like TV doesn't do it justice, and words can't do it justice. It's just something you have to experience. The second time I saw Undertaker live, I was at SummerSlam 2005, which was over in DC, and he was that was his rematch with Orton. Was at that show, their big WrestleMania rematch, where Orton actually defeated him. Again, very good match. Really good stuff. And again, being there live for the entrance was an amazing experience. So it was, again, really good. I think that his feud with Randy is massively underrated. I think that was one of his better feuds. It doesn't get brought up a whole lot. And I thought the matches they had were typically really, really good. But... and they actually repaired Randy Orton. They kind of saved his career because, he had been built up so well as a heel, and the feud with Foley really put him over the top. And then he got put through the Triple H buzzsaw for no reason. No good reason, anyway. And then he just kind of like, oh, well, he's a dopey babyface that has nothing to do. And then he just feuded with Undertaker, became a heel again, and everything got fixed. So, Undertaker kind of saved Randy Orton's career there. And then I saw Undertaker again at WrestleMania 29, my first WrestleMania live experience. And obviously him and CM Punk stole the show without question. I mean, they were the best part of. And otherwise, I criticized that show heavily because it was a WrestleMania where almost nothing happened. The streak stayed intact. Cena's still awesome. He wins all the time. It's like, oh, he beat Rock and made up for the loss last year. I'm like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. I called it the second Rock beat him the last time, Triple H is still awesome, and he beat Lesnar because that needed to happen for some reason. And then just a whole lot of, nothing happened. Just not a whole lot of interesting things took place. And it was just kind of a dull WrestleMania. But CM Punk and Undertaker, I thought they had a hell of a match. It was just an outstanding, exciting match between two guys that I really, really enjoyed watching, especially CM Punk at the time. But Undertaker, Undertaker was there for that match. It's one of the best matches I've ever seen live. So good on them. Just very good stuff there. And after that, Undertaker's appearances have been coming less and less and less and less, and reduced to kind of a once-a-year guy, or maybe twice if you're lucky, and it all kind of moved on from there. But Undertaker, he's been, like I said, he's been a staple of the WWE for a really, really long time, and that can't be understated because nobody has runs like that. Nobody has 25-year runs, even though he's become more of a part-timer. Nobody has 25-year runs, and nobody stays this over for this long. It's just a remarkable feat, both for the talent himself, Mark Calloway, and for WWE Creative and Promotions for being able to keep this character fresh for as long as they have. It's Undertaker just feels like this once-in-a-lifetime superstar. So whatever my criticisms of him now, I like I said, I've been critical of Undertaker in recent years, but again, it can't be denied the impact he's had on the WWF or WWE, and just the level of dedication and both dedication to the character and dedication to his craft can't be understated. And thank you to the Undertaker for all the great memories and all the great moments, great matches, great feuds. Obviously there's bad sprinkled in, but I like to focus on the positive, and there's been way more positives with Undertaker than there have been negatives. So congratulations on 25 years in the WWE. I still wish you would just retire. Hopefully, now that you've done 25 years in the WWE, it's kind of like, all right, maybe the next WrestleMania will be his last one, and maybe that'll be it, and Undertaker will finally retire, and we can move on and hopefully find the new Undertaker, although that's going to be a hell of a void to fill because, I don't know where you find another Undertaker after everything. One could argue that Kane is kind of like he was kind of the second Undertaker in a way. He's lasted forever, but he didn't have the same level of quality or mystique around him. And again, Kane kind of got ruined by creative at various points, so he didn't have that. Because even during the down years, so like when he was feuding with like Giant Gonzalez and Kamu Mustafa, they still did a great job of maintaining Undertaker's mystique. And even things like the Undertaker versus Undertaker feud, which was actually a great storyline that got hindered by two things. One, the inclusion of Leslie Nielsen, which only made it a joke. That was the problem. And I love Leslie Nielsen. Airplane is one of my favorite comedies of all time. And the Naked Gun movies I really, really like. This is not a knock on Leslie Nielsen. It's just that when you include him in the storyline, it instantly becomes a joke. It instantly becomes, okay, this is not meant to be taken seriously. It's kind of meant to be comical. And I don't think they were intending for the whole thing to be comical. I think it was meant to be taken seriously. But I really liked what they did with, like, the Undertaker sightings. And it was kind of this investigative reporting thing that they had going that evolved week to week, and all these people being interviewed. And yeah, it was cheesy, but it was, at the same time, it was kind of like this nice evolving story. It's like what happened to Undertaker after the match with Yokozuna, and all these people were saying, I saw the Undertaker, and Undertaker sightings all over the place. And it was really kind of this really neat thing that they did. And then Ted DiBiase brought in his fake Undertaker, which I distinctly remember watching that at 9 when they brought him out for the first time. I looked at him and I'm like, that's not Undertaker. That's a fake. And of course, sure enough, it was. And it was funny because I think they were going for, oh no, Undertaker turned heel and he sold out to Ted DiBiase, but I think every kid kind of looked at it as like, that's not Undertaker. And excuse me. So I don't know if that part worked out as well as they'd wanted to, but overall I did like the story. But the other problem with it, not only was Leslie Nielsen involved, but the other problem was that the match just sucked. And of course they had to follow that amazing Bret Hart and Owen Hart cage match, which should have been the main event. But yeah, if the match had not sucked, and because it was, the problem with the match is that it was literally Undertaker wrestling himself. So, it's just two guys doing the exact same moves to each other. So it just kind of came off more awkward than entertaining. But I thought the storyline itself was actually quite good. But that's just me. Or at least it's better than people give it credit. It's just, you take out Leslie Nielsen in the shitty match and you've actually got a pretty good story there. But I think I've rambled on long enough talking about Undertaker's career. Just to break it down, my favorite, I want to do my favorite Undertaker moment, match, and feud. And I've already kind of listed them, but just as kind of a recap of the whole thing, my favorite Undertaker moment was that early funeral parlor moment when he attacked Hulk Hogan, left him laying, and ripped the crucifix off while Piper and Savage were staring at him. Because, again, it's just one of those... It left a very good early impression on me as a kid. It was like, wow, this guy's the real deal. Like, oh my God, he's one of the top guys in the company. He's a force to be reckoned with. Just a great first impression. Not a first impression because it wasn't the first time I saw him, but it was a great early impression. Like, oh my God, you don't screw with Taker. This guy means business. And so that's my favorite Undertaker moment. My favorite Undertaker match, as I alluded to earlier, it's the match with Kane at WrestleMania 14. It's either the match with Kane at WrestleMania 14, which was brilliantly done, and I've praised that match enough. Go back and watch my previous videos. I put it in I think it was number 4 on my top 30 WrestleMania match list. I just love that match to death. So go back and watch that to get a full explanation as to why. And number 2, or tied, either or, for best match would be the Hell in a Cell match with Shawn, which was just such a huge trend-setting, unique, violent display while also having this great story with this great drama interwoven into it. Not only introducing Kane, but also the whole idea of Shawn being this little rat bastard that you wanted to see get the shit kicked out of him, and he finally got locked in a cage with this feral animal that wanted to just rip his head off. So, that match comes off beautifully. I still think it's the best Hell in a Cell match ever. It's my personal favorite, and that will probably never change. It's kind of like the Shawn and Razor ladder match. I guess you never forget your first, but... that's my favorite Undertaker match. And my favorite Undertaker feud, probably the feud with Kane. Early on, like from the moment that Paul Bearer blackmailed Undertaker with The Secret... up until their WrestleMania 14 match, and even into their Inferno match a month later, where they did the bit on Raw. I'll never forget. People have forgotten this moment on Raw, and I think it's one of the best, craziest moments in Raw history, was when Kane actually went to the graveyard where The Undertaker and Kane's parents were buried, and dug up their caskets, set The Undertaker's father's casket on fire on the stage, and he chokeslammed The Undertaker into their mother's casket, which is one of the darkest, craziest things that the WWE ever did. And it's something I'll never forget, but somehow, for some reason, nobody seems to remember that moment. But, it's stuff like that made the feud with Kane just so great and so wonderful. You had this huge, tragic backstory with the two. You had... the horror movie element with Kane being like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees and just being this believable, ferocious monster that was out for revenge. And you got the wonderful payoff at WrestleMania 14 and the Inferno match a month later. Anytime they revisited it after that, it was just never, the magic just was never as good. But that first year, man, Undertaker and Kane was a pretty awesome stuff. And obviously, I love the feud with Mankind. I love the feud with Shawn Michaels. I love the feud with Edge. Those are kind of the standout Undertaker feuds to me, anyway. But yeah, that's my look at the Undertaker's entire career. Very abridged, but I just wanted to come on here and praise the guy because, like I said, in recent years I've been critical on him, but there's plenty of stuff to praise about him too, and I wanted to be more positive in this video. So yeah, thank you, Mark Calloway, the Undertaker, for all the great memories and all of your effort and dedication to the craft and to the art of pro wrestling. And like I said, hopefully you retire soon, and it'll be like The Simpsons. Once you're gone, we'll be able to get back to really celebrating your greatness rather than just kind of waiting for it to be over. So, yeah, and I think obviously wrestling history is going to look back on Undertaker very, very fondly. I don't think that's a question. I think the character's just too unique and was so strong for so long that he's going to be... He's going to be remembered as one of the all-time greats, without question. There's no doubt in my mind. But, yeah, that is all I have for now. Hopefully you all enjoy Survivor Series. I will be watching the event, and hopefully, we'll see if they've got some rabbits in the hat or tricks up their sleeves for the new WWE champion, and maybe even in the Undertaker and Kane versus Wyatt's match. Hopefully they do something special for that as well, because those are the two big things that they're selling the pay-per-view on. So, here's hoping. But until then, I will have a video review of Survivor Series probably up by Tuesday or Wednesday. Definitely before Thanksgiving, obviously. But until then, I will see you all later.